She paid for the house, the food, and the photos they'd brag about. Then her mother texted, "Don't come, you ruin the mood." She canceled everything. They didn't know until they stood in the snow, bags in hand, door locked, and that was only the beginning. My name is Lauren, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a product director at a tech company in Denver, the kind of job that sounds impressive at dinner parties, but mostly means I spend 12-hour days staring at screens and mediating between engineers who think in code and executives who think in quarterly profits. It's exhausting, but it pays well. Well enough that when I decided to book a $10,000 chalet in Jackson Hole for Thanksgiving, I didn't even flinch at the price tag. I remember the exact moment I found the listing. It was a Tuesday night in early October, and I was scrolling through vacation rentals while eating takeout pad thai straight from the container. The photos made my heart skip floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-dusted pines, a stone fireplace big enough to stand in, a kitchen with copper pots hanging from wrought iron hooks, 6 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a hot tub on the deck, the kind of place that whispered family memories in every carefully staged shot. That's what I wanted, family memories, the real kind, not the forced smiles in front of a timer-set camera that characterized every holiday photo from my childhood. I wanted my parents to walk through those massive wooden doors and think, "Lauren did this. Lauren made this happen." I wanted my sister Ashley to post photos on Instagram and tag me with genuine gratitude instead of the passive-aggressive comments she usually left on my posts. Most of all, I wanted to feel like I belonged. The booking process was simple. A few clicks, a credit card number, and suddenly I had reserved paradise for the week of Thanksgiving. I immediately created a new group chat, Jackson Hole Thanksgiving 2024, and added Mom, Dad, and Ashley. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed the message. "Surprise, I've booked us an incredible chalet in Jackson Hole for Thanksgiving week, all expenses covered. Can't wait to spend quality time together." The responses came quickly. Mom sent a string of heart emojis and, "Oh, Lauren, how wonderful." Dad wrote, "Very generous of you, sweetheart." Ashley's response was more measured, "Wow, fancy," but she added a champagne bottle emoji, which I chose to interpret as enthusiasm. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into planning. I researched local restaurants for a pre-Thanksgiving dinner, found a highly rated catering company for the main event, and even looked into photographer options for a professional family portrait session. Every evening after work, I'd pour a glass of wine and lose myself in the fantasy of it all. I imagined us gathered around that stone fireplace, sharing stories and laughing. I pictured morning coffee on the deck, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. I envisioned cooking breakfast for everyone, the smell of bacon and fresh-baked cinnamon rolls filling the air while snow fell gently outside. In my mind, this would be the Thanksgiving that changed everything, the one where my family finally saw me not as the workhorse daughter who handled logistics and paid for things, but as someone worth celebrating, someone worth including. I shared updates in the group chat with the enthusiasm of a cruise director, photos of the chalet, links to activities, weather forecasts showing perfect snow conditions. At first, the responses were warm. Mom asked about the kitchen amenities. Dad inquired about hiking trails. Ashley wanted to know if the hot tub was private. But as October melted into November, something shifted. The responses became shorter, less enthusiastic. When I sent a suggested menu for Thanksgiving dinner, nothing fancy, just traditional dishes with a few gourmet touches, Mom replied with, "That seems complicated." When I mentioned I'd found a lovely restaurant for our first night, Ashley wrote, "Do we have to go out? Can't we just relax?" I told myself they were just busy. Mom was probably stressed about her book club hosting duties. Ashley was likely overwhelmed with her job at the dental office. Dad never texted much anyway. I pushed down the familiar knot in my stomach, the one that had been there since childhood, whispering that I was trying too hard, caring too much, wanting things they'd never give. 3 days before the trip, I was in my office finalizing a product launch timeline when my phone buzzed, a text from Mom in our group chat. "Lauren, we need to talk about Thanksgiving." My hands stilled on my keyboard. That knot in my stomach tightened. I knew that tone, even through text. It was the same tone she used when she told me I couldn't go to Emma Patterson's birthday party in 4th grade because I hadn't finished reorganizing the garage. The same tone when she explained why Ashley needed a new prom dress, but my request for new running shoes would have to wait. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding, "Is everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Your father and I have been discussing it, and we think it might be best if you don't come to Jackson Hole." The office air conditioner hummed. Someone laughed in the hallway. My computer screen blurred as tears formed in my eyes. But I blinked them back. Not here, not at work. "I don't understand," I typed. "I booked the chalet. I'm paying for everything." This time the response came quickly. "We know, and we're grateful. But Thanksgiving is about family harmony, and you tend to make things heavy. We want this to be a relaxing vacation." Heavy. I made things heavy. I closed my eyes and saw myself at 8 years old, asking why Santa brought Ashley twice as many presents. I saw myself at 14, wondering aloud why I had to miss my soccer tournament to babysit while Mom and Ashley went shopping. I saw myself at 22, home from college, questioning why my graduation wasn't worth a party when Ashley's high school diploma had warranted a catered affair. Heavy, because I noticed, because I remembered, because I dared to want what Ashley got without asking. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I set my phone face down on my desk and turned back to my computer screen. The product launch timeline stared back at me, all neat cells and color-coded categories. Everything in its place, everything accounted for, everything except a place for me at the table I was paying for. Outside my office window, Denver sprawled beneath gray November clouds. Somewhere in Wyoming, a beautiful chalet waited, its windows reflecting empty sky, its fireplace cold. In 3 days, my family would drive there without me, walk through those massive doors, and never once think about the daughter who made it possible. Or so they thought. The cursor blinked on my computer screen, but I couldn't focus on the product timeline anymore. My mother's words echoed in my mind. "You tend to make things heavy." I picked up my phone again, scrolling up through our group chat history. Just 2 weeks ago, she'd been sending heart emojis. Now I was uninvited from the vacation I was funding. The cognitive dissonance made my head spin. A new message appeared. "Ashley. Mom's right. Lauren, you always have to analyze everything. Sometimes we just want to eat turkey without discussing why the patriarchy influenced traditional gender roles in holiday cooking." I almost laughed. When had I ever brought up the patriarchy at Thanksgiving? But then I remembered last year. Ashley had been complaining about having to help in the kitchen while her boyfriend watched football with Dad. I'd simply said, "You could ask him to help too." Apparently, that counted as making things heavy. Another text from Mom. "We know you mean well, sweetie, but your intensity can be overwhelming. This trip will be good for you too. You can have a quiet holiday to yourself. Maybe catch up on work." Catch up on work, on Thanksgiving. I stood abruptly, my desk chair rolling backward. My colleague Rachel peeked over our shared cubicle wall. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Family stuff," I managed. She nodded knowingly. "The holidays, right? They bring out the worst in everyone." If only she knew. I told Rachel I needed some air and headed for the elevator. Once outside, I walked aimlessly through downtown Denver, my breath forming clouds in the cold November air. The city was already dressed for the holidays, twinkling lights wrapped around bare trees, red and gold banners hanging from street lamps. A Salvation Army bell ringer smiled at me. I dropped a 20 in his bucket and kept walking. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time. "Your mother told me about the conversation. I think this is for the best. Lauren, you know how you get." How I get, like I was a problem to be managed, a volatile chemical that might explode if handled incorrectly. I found myself at a small park and sat on a bench, ignoring the cold seeping through my wool coat. A memory surfaced. Unbidden Thanksgiving, when I was 12. I'd spent hours helping Mom cook. chopping vegetables until my hands cramped, stirring gravy until my arm ached. When we finally sat down to eat, Mom had thanked everyone for their contributions, Dad for carving the turkey, Ashley for setting the table, which I'd actually done while she texted friends, even Uncle Pete for bringing store-bought rolls. Everyone except me. When I'd quietly said, "I helped too," Mom had sighed and said, "Lauren, must you always make everything about you?" I wasn't making it about me. I just wanted to be seen. My phone rang. "Mom," against my better judgment, I answered. "Lauren, honey, I hope you understand this isn't personal." "How is it not personal?" "Mom, you're literally excluding me as a person." A heavy sigh. "This is exactly what I mean. The dramatics. Can't you just accept things gracefully? Accept being uninvited from the vacation I'm paying for. No one asked you to pay for it. You insisted. You always do this, throw money at situations and then act like it gives you control." The accusation stung because there was a kernel of truth in it. I did use money to try to secure my place in the family, but only because I'd learned early that achievement and financial success were the only contributions they valued from me, even if they never acknowledged them. "So you'll take the vacation but not me. We'll reimburse you, of course." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "With what, Ashley's still paying off her credit cards, and you just refinanced the house. See, this is why we need a break from you, Lauren, the judgment, the superiority." I'm not. I stopped. There was no point. In their narrative, I was always the villain, the demanding one, the difficult one, the heavy one. "I have to go," I said. "Lauren, don't be like this. Maybe next year." I hung up. The park was emptying as the afternoon grew colder. A couple walked by, holding hands and laughing. A father pushed his daughter on a swing, her delighted shrieks piercing the gray day. Normal families, happy families, families that included all their members. I thought about the chalet, sitting empty and waiting. I'd chosen it specifically for its size, enough bedrooms that everyone could have privacy, but common spaces designed for gathering. I'd imagined us there so clearly I could almost smell the pine and wood smoke. My phone buzzed with another text. Ashley. "Mom's crying. Thanks a lot." Of course, I was uninvited from Thanksgiving, but somehow I was still responsible for ruining it. I texted back, "Maybe if she's crying, she should consider why her daughter being hurt would upset her." Ashley. "God, you're exhausting." Mom. "Your sister says you're being hostile. This is what we mean. Lauren." I stared at the messages. In their world, my pain was hostility. My disappointment was dramatics. My desire to be included was exhausting. Dad chimed in. "Let's all take a breath. Lauren, the reservation is in your name. Just email us the confirmation details and we'll handle check-in." The casualness of it took my breath away. They were really going to go. They were really going to drive to Wyoming, check into the luxury chalet I'd booked, cook in the kitchen I'd paid for, sit by the fireplace I'd imagined us all around, and never once think it was wrong. I stood up from the bench, suddenly decisive. "I'll send the information soon," I texted back. Mom. "Thank you for understanding. Sweetie, this is very mature of you. Mature, like I was a child learning to share toys, not a grown woman being excluded from her own family." I walked back to the office, my mind racing. They wanted the confirmation details. They wanted to check into my $10,000 gift and enjoy a week of luxury without the inconvenience of my presence. But what if there was nothing to check into? The thought hit me like lightning. The reservation was in my name, my credit card, my email address. The chalet company had been very clear about their cancellation policy, full refund up to 48 hours before check-in. I checked my phone. It was Tuesday afternoon. Check-in was Friday at 4 p.m. I had time. Back at my desk, I pulled up the reservation email. There it was, the beautiful chalet with its promise of family togetherness. I looked at the cancellation link at the bottom of the email. One click, that's all it would take. Rachel appeared again. "Feeling better?" "Actually," I said, a strange calm settling over me. I think I am. She smiled and returned to her work. I minimized the reservation email and went back to my product timeline. I had a presentation tomorrow, stakeholders to prepare for, metrics to review, work that valued my contributions, people who included me because I added value, not in spite of it. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. Don't forget to send the confirmation. Love you. Love you. The words sat on my screen like artificial sweetener meant to seem real, but leaving a bitter aftertaste. I didn't respond. I had 48 hours to decide what to do with that cancellation link. 48 hours to choose between being the good daughter who accepted exclusion gracefully and being the heavy one who finally said enough. For the first time in my life, being heavy didn't sound so bad. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was transported back to our house in suburban Ohio, where the dynamics that now played out over text messages had been forged in the crucible of daily life. I was 7 when I first understood I was different from Ashley. Not in appearance, we both had Mom's green eyes and Dad's stubborn chin. The difference was in how we were seen. Ashley, 2 years younger, was the baby. She was delicate, precious, to be protected. I was sturdy, reliable, to be used. The memory that surfaced was so vivid, I could smell the lemon pledge a Saturday morning. Cartoons playing in the living room where Ashley sat curled on the couch. I was in the kitchen, standing on a step stool to reach the sink, washing breakfast dishes. Why doesn't Ashley have to help? I'd asked Mom. She's too little to handle the dishes safely, Mom had replied. Despite Ashley being 5, the same age I'd been when dish duty became my responsibility. But I did dishes when I was 5. Mom's mouth had tightened that look I'd come to know so well. Lauren, stop comparing. Every child is different. Different. Yes, we were. Ashley was the child to be cherished. I was the child to be functional. By 10. I had a whole roster of responsibilities: taking out trash, folding laundry, vacuuming, making my own lunch for school. Ashley's job was to be good, which apparently meant staying out of the way while I worked. When I pointed out the disparity, I was told I was being difficult. When I completed my tasks without complaint, I was ignored. Report card days were the worst. Ashley would come home with B's and C's, and Mom would crow about how smart she was, how hard she tried. Dad would ruffle her hair and promise ice cream. My straight A's were met with nods, and that's expected. No ice cream, no hair ruffling, just the assumption that excellence was my baseline, deserving no praise. I learned to find validation elsewhere. Teachers who wrote glowing comments, librarians who saved books for me, the elderly neighbor who paid me to walk her dog and always said I was such a responsible young lady. I collected these scraps of recognition like treasures, storing them up against the drought at home. High school brought new inequities. Ashley joined cheerleading expensive uniforms, camp fees, travel to competitions, all paid without question. When I made the varsity soccer team, I had to fundraise for my equipment. Soccer is so aggressive for girls, Mom had said, wrinkling her nose. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something more refined? But I was good at soccer, really good. Good enough that coaches started mentioning scholarships. My parents came to exactly 1 game my entire high school career. They never missed a cheerleading competition. We can't be in 2 places at once, Mom explained when I asked why they chose Ashley's events over mine. But you're never at my things, not once. Don't exaggerate. Lauren, we were at your middle school graduation. A mandatory event they'd had to attend. College was my escape. I chose a school 5 hours away, far enough that casual visits were impossible. I threw myself into my studies, computer science and business, subjects that promised good jobs and financial independence. I made friends who celebrated my achievements. I dated people who found my intensity attractive rather than overwhelming. But holidays meant going home, and home meant reverting to childhood roles. Ashley had stayed local, gone to community college for a semester before deciding higher education wasn't for her. She lived at home until 23, then moved into an apartment Dad helped her find. with rent mom subsidized. When I graduated summa cum laude, they said they couldn't afford to fly out for the ceremony. 2 months later, they threw Ashley a party for getting promoted to senior receptionist at the dental office. "It's different," Mom explained when I called. "Hurt. Ashley needs more support. You've always been so independent." Independent, like it was a choice rather than a necessity. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I got my first real job at a startup in Denver, the family response was muted. "That's nice, dear. Is it stable?" When Ashley got engaged to a man she'd known for 3 months, Mom called everyone in the extended family to share the joy. The wedding was the breaking point. Mom threw herself into planning with gusto, spending money they didn't have on flowers and catering and a dress that cost more than my first car. When I offered to help pay, Mom got offended. "We can handle our own daughter's wedding. Lauren..." But when I mentioned I was saving for a house, Dad asked if I really needed something so extravagant. I was the maid of honor, of course. Who else would handle the logistics, organize the bachelorette party, keep everything running smoothly? I did it all with a smile. Even when Ashley had a meltdown about the napkin colors and blamed me for ordering ivory instead of cream. At the reception, during the parents' speeches, Mom talked about how Ashley had always been their sunshine girl, bringing joy and light to their lives. Dad spoke of his little princess growing up. 25 minutes of memories and praise. When Mom mentioned me, it was one line. "And of course, we thank Lauren for all her help with the planning." The help, not our other daughter, not Ashley's sister. The help. I smiled through it all, danced when required, and left as early as politeness allowed. The next day, I blocked out a week of vacation time and went to Mexico alone. When I posted photos of myself on the beach, actually relaxing for once, Mom texted, "Must be nice to have money for fancy trips." Ashley's honeymoon to Hawaii, funded by our parents, had been 3 weeks long. The marriage lasted 8 months. When Ashley called me sobbing at 2 a.m., I listened. When she needed a place to stay, I offered my couch. When she wanted to talk through what went wrong, I was there. But when the divorce was final and she moved back home, the narrative shifted. Poor Ashley. So trusting. So wronged. Strong Lauren. So lucky to be single and focused on her career. "You wouldn't understand," Ashley told me once. "You've never been vulnerable like that." I wanted to scream that vulnerability was a luxury I'd never been afforded, that I'd learned to be strong because no one ever caught me when I fell, but I just nodded and changed the subject. That's how it always was. I succeeded in spite of them. Not because of them. Every achievement was mine alone, unwitnessed, uncelebrated, but every holiday, I came back. Every crisis, I showed up. Every time they needed something money, time, effort, I gave it. Why? Lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling of my Denver condo, I finally admitted the truth I kept hoping. Despite all evidence to the contrary, I kept believing that someday, if I just did enough, gave enough, achieved enough, they would see me, really see me, not as the responsible one, or the difficult one, or the heavy one, but as Lauren, their daughter, worthy of the same easy love they lavished on Ashley. The chalet was supposed to be that moment. Look, I'd say with $10,000 worth of luxury, look how well I've done. Look what I can provide. Look at me. But they'd looked, all right, they'd looked and decided they wanted the gift but not the giver. My phone glowed on the nightstand. Another text from Mom. "Haven't heard from you about the confirmation. Everything okay?" Everything okay. As if she hadn't just excluded me from Thanksgiving. As if this was all normal. I typed back, "Just busy with work. We'll handle it tomorrow." Don't forget, we're so excited. Ashley's already planning the menu. The menu I'd suggested, the one Mom had called complicated. I put the phone down and closed my eyes. Tomorrow was Wednesday. The cancellation deadline loomed like a promise. For the first time in my life, I had the power to disappoint them the way they'd always disappointed me. The thought should have felt vengeful. Instead, it felt like freedom. Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold. I'd managed 3 hours of sleep, but my mind felt crystal clear. I moved through my morning routine: shower, coffee, emails with a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching myself from outside my body. At the office, I threw myself into work. The product launch presentation went flawlessly. Stakeholders nodded appreciatively at my thorough risk analysis. My manager pulled me aside afterward to say she was recommending me for a senior director position. "You've really proven yourself, Lauren. The executive team sees you as someone who delivers consistently." Consistently, reliably, the same words that had defined my childhood. But here they came with recognition, advancement, respect. Here, being dependable was rewarded, not expected and ignored. During lunch, I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at my phone. The Chalet cancellation email was still open in my browser. One click, but my finger hovered over the screen, paralyzed by decades of conditioning. Good daughters didn't retaliate. Good daughters absorbed hurt and converted it to helpfulness. Good daughters gave and gave until there was nothing left, then apologized for being empty. But what had being good gotten me? I thought about every childhood Christmas when Ashley's pile of presents dwarfed mine. Every school event attended solo while my parents cheered Ashley from the front row. Every achievement minimized. Every need dismissed as excessive. Every time I'd been told I was too much, too intense, too analytical, too heavy, while simultaneously never being enough to earn their unconditional love. My phone rang. Rachel, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I declined, saying I had errands to run. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did have one very important errand. I drove to my bank, the fancy one downtown with the mahogany desks and free espresso. My account manager, Patricia, greeted me warmly. "Lauren, what can I help you with today?" "I need to understand something about a large pending charge on my card," I said. "The Jackson Hole property." She pulled up my account. "Ah, yes. The $10,000 vacation rental. It's showing as pending but not yet processed. These usually finalize 48 hours before the booking date. And if I were to cancel, then the hold would simply drop off. No charge would process." She studied my face. "Is there an issue with the booking?" "You could say that." She leaned back in her leather chair. "I've been in banking for 20 years. Lauren, I've seen a lot of family vacation bookings, and I've seen a lot of them get canceled. Usually, it's because someone realized that paying for everyone doesn't mean everyone appreciates it." I smiled despite myself. That obvious. "Let's just say you're not the first successful woman to sit in that chair wondering if generosity toward family is worth the emotional cost." We talked for a few more minutes about investment opportunities, the better use of that $10,000. As I left, Patricia handed me her card. "In case you need anything, and Lauren, sometimes the best gift you can give your family is the opportunity to understand what they've lost." Back in my car, I pulled up Ashley's Instagram. Her latest post was an excited announcement. "Mountain vacation countdown, so blessed to have family who makes dreams come true." The comments were full of heart emojis and "so jealous" reactions. One friend wrote, "Your family is goals," Ashley had replied. "We're so lucky. Lucky, blessed, grateful for family who makes dreams come true." But nowhere did she mention which family member. Nowhere did she acknowledge who was making this particular dream possible. I scrolled back through her feed. There was the divorce announcement, sympathetically worded to maximize support, the wedding photos, where I looked tired behind my maid of honor smile. Before that, countless selfies and nights out, often with captions about living my best life, during the years she lived rent-free at home while I worked 60-hour weeks to establish my career. My phone buzzed. Mom again. "Lauren, I really need that confirmation. We want to start planning our drive." Our drive, our vacation, our family Thanksgiving, just not ours in any way that included me. I thought about texting back the truth. "I'm considering canceling since I'm not welcome," but I could already predict the response. I'd be called petty, vindictive, manipulative, using money to control them, making everything heavy, as usual. Instead, I typed, still at work, busy day. You work too much. That's probably why you're so stressed all the time. Stressed, not hurt, not betrayed, just stressed. Like my pain was a personal failing rather than a reasonable response to rejection. I drove home, my mind churning. In my living room, I'd hung a photo from last Thanksgiving, all of us around Mom's dining table. I studied it now with new eyes. Mom and Dad flanked Ashley at the center. I was on the edge, literally cut off by the frame in the original, though I'd cropped it to include myself. Even in photos, I was an afterthought. That evening, I called my best friend from college, Sarah. She listened to the whole story without interrupting. "Let me get this straight," she said finally. "They uninvited you from a $10,000 vacation you're paying for, and they expect you to just be fine with it. Apparently. And you're really considering letting them go. I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe they're right, and I do make everything heavy. Maybe they deserve a nice holiday without—" "Stop." Sarah's voice was firm. "Lauren, I need you to hear this. You don't make things heavy. You make things real. There's a difference. Your family prefers the fantasy where Ashley is the golden child, and you're the supportive backdrop. You disrupts that by existing as a full person with feelings and needs." "But they're my family." "No. Family shows up for your soccer games. Family celebrates your promotions. Family includes you in the vacation you're funding. What you have are relatives who've trained you to accept crumbs and be grateful." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, her words echoing. Relatives, not family. I made myself dinner a proper meal, not takeout, and ate at my dining table instead of in front of the TV. I'd bought this place myself, decorated it myself, built a life that was entirely mine. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, every piece of art on the walls chosen by me, for me. No one else's preferences considered or required. It was a good life, a full life, a life that didn't depend on their approval or inclusion. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, the Chalet website still glowing on the screen. Those perfect rooms, that perfect fireplace, that perfect setting for the perfect family Thanksgiving that existed only in my imagination. I thought about them arriving Friday afternoon. Mom would criticize the drive while Dad stayed silent. Ashley would immediately claim the best bedroom, probably the master suite I'd envisioned for our parents. They'd take photos for social media, careful to angle out any evidence of who made it possible. They'd cook the meals I'd suggested, play the games I'd researched, build the memories I'd orchestrated. And they'd be relieved I wasn't there to make it heavy with my presence. The cancellation buttons seemed to pulse on my screen. One click between their expectation and their reality. One click between being the good daughter and being free. I closed the laptop without deciding. I had 24 hours left. 24 hours to choose between a lifetime of patterns and the terrifying possibility of something new. Outside, Denver glittered under a clear winter sky. Somewhere in Wyoming, an empty chalet waited. By Friday afternoon, it would either hold my family without me, or it would hold nothing at all, just snow and silence and the echo of consequences finally come home. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my window, watching the city lights. For 36 years, I'd been exactly who they'd trained me to be: useful, quiet about my own needs, eternally hoping that service would transform into love. Tomorrow, I would decide if that was who I wanted to remain. Thursday morning dawned crisp and bright, the kind of Colorado day that usually filled me with energy. But I'd spent another sleepless night wrestling with my decision, and exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. I called in sick to work the first time in 2 years. My manager was concerned. "This isn't like you, Lauren. Are you okay?" "Just need a personal day," I said, which was true enough. I spent the morning cleaning my already spotless apartment, needing the mindless physical activity. As I dusted the bookshelf, my hand paused on a small framed photo tucked behind newer pictures. It was from my college graduation me in cap and gown, smiling broadly, alone. I'd taken it with a timer because no one from my family had come. The memory of that day washed over me, how I'd scanned the crowd during the ceremony, still hoping to spot them despite their clear, "we can't make it" email. How I'd watched other graduates surrounded by proud families while I collected my diploma to the applause of strangers. How I'd treated myself to a nice dinner afterward, table for one, telling the sympathetic waitress I was celebrating. I'd been making excuses for them even then. They couldn't afford the trip. Ashley had finals at community college. Dad's back was acting up. All reasonable explanations that I'd accepted without question, even though they'd driven twice as far to Ashley's boyfriend's guitar recital the following month. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. "Can you send the chalet info already? I want to look at the rooms again and pick mine." Pick hers, as if she had options to choose from, preferences that mattered, as if this was her gift to customize. I didn't respond. An hour later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. "Lauren, this is getting ridiculous. We need the booking information today. Your father wants to plan the route, and I need to know about the kitchen setup for grocery shopping. Stop being petty and send the details." Petty, there it was. Any resistance to their demands was petty. Any expectation of reciprocity was demanding. Any hurt feelings were dramatic. They had a word for everything I felt that made it small and wrong. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. Not once did she ask if I was okay. Not once did she acknowledge that uninviting me might have been hurtful. Just demands and dismissal. The twin pillars of our relationship. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. The Chalet website auto-loaded. My reservation front and center. "Your dream vacation awaits," the banner proclaimed. I laughed, dark and bitter. My dream vacation had never included being excluded. But what had my dreams ever included? Really? I closed my eyes and tried to envision it the perfect family Thanksgiving I'd imagined when I booked the chalet. All of us together, laughing, sharing, being grateful for each other. The scene felt like a movie I'd watched too many times, fictional and worn thin, because even if I'd been included, it wouldn't have played out that way. Mom would have found fault with my menu choices, even while eating them. Dad would have disappeared into his phone or a book. Ashley would have monopolized conversations with her latest drama, and I would have cooked and cleaned and managed logistics, invisible until something went wrong. "You're so good at handling everything," Mom would have said, which sounded like praise but was really just permission to let me work while they relaxed. My laptop dinged with an email, Patricia from the bank, following up on our conversation. "Just wanted to remind you that the cancellation window closes at 4 p.m. today. Whatever you decide, make sure it's what you want, not what you think you should do." What I wanted. When had I last made a decision based purely on what I wanted? I thought about calling my therapist, but I already knew what she'd say. She'd been gently pushing me for months to examine why I kept seeking approval from people who'd shown me repeatedly they weren't capable of giving it. "You're trying to earn something that was supposed to be freely given," she'd said once. "Children shouldn't have to audition for their parents' love." But I had auditioned, over and over. Every report card, every trophy, every promotion, all of them laid at my parents' feet, like offerings to indifferent gods. And now, the biggest offering of all, a luxury vacation that cost more than they'd ever spent on me in my entire childhood. My phone rang again. Dad this time. "Lauren, your mother is getting anxious. Just send the information and be done with it." "Dad, how do you feel about me not coming?" I asked, surprising myself with the directness. A pause. "Your mother explained the situation. You understand." "I understand that I'm being excluded from a vacation I'm paying for. Do you understand how that might feel?" He sighed. "Lauren, you're 36 years old. Do you really need to make everything about feelings? This is why your mother gets frustrated. Sometimes things just are what they are." And what is this, exactly? A chance for a peaceful family holiday. Without me, so I'm not family or I'm not peaceful. Don't twist my words. You know what I mean. I did know. I was family when it was convenient, when they needed something. But when it came to warmth, inclusion, or celebration, I was optional. Worse than optional, I was an obstacle to their enjoyment. "I have to go," I said. The confirmation, "Lauren, I heard you." I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. The silence that followed felt like diving into cool water on a burning day. I spent the afternoon at a spa, something I rarely did. As I lay on the massage table, muscles slowly unknotting, I thought about value. My family valued me for what I could provide: money, effort, solutions. My workplace valued me for what I could produce: strategies, presentations, results. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten to value myself for simply existing. The massage therapist worked on a particularly tight spot in my shoulder. "You carry a lot of tension here," she said. "This is where we hold responsibility for others." I almost laughed, if only she knew. By the time I left the spa, it was nearly 3 p.m., 1 hour until the cancellation deadline. I sat in my car in the parking lot, phone still off, decision crystallizing like ice on a window. I thought about them packing right now. Ashley probably had a new outfit specifically for the trip, charged to a credit card she couldn't afford. Mom would have overpacked, bringing things just in case, expecting someone else to carry the extra bags. Dad would be checking the weather obsessively, planning for every possible road condition except the possibility that their destination might not exist. They were probably irritated with me right now, checking their phones, complaining to each other about how difficult I was being. "Classic Lauren," Ashley would say. "She always has to make everything complicated." But I wasn't the one who'd made this complicated. I'd offered a simple gift, a beautiful place to spend Thanksgiving together. They'd complicated it by deciding together was negotiable. 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes left. I turned on my phone to find 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I didn't read them. Instead, I pulled up the Chalet reservation. The photos still looked perfect. That gorgeous stone fireplace where we wouldn't gather, the chef's kitchen where I wouldn't cook for them, the hot tub where they'd soak without me, probably toasting their good fortune at having a family member willing to fund their exclusion. 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes. One last text came through, from Ashley. "Mom's literally crying because you're ignoring us. I hope you're happy." Happy. Was I happy? I thought about the alternative. Send the confirmation. Let them go. Spend Thanksgiving alone in my apartment, knowing they were enjoying my gift without me. Wait for the pictures on social media. The ones where I'd be cropped out not just physically but emotionally. Listen to stories afterward about what a wonderful time they'd had, with the subtle implication that it was wonderful because I wasn't there. And then what Christmas would come, and the pattern would continue. Every holiday, every family moment, every opportunity for connection, I'd always be on the periphery, funding their joy from a distance, accepted only when useful. 3:55 p.m., 5 minutes. I thought about what Patricia had said. Sometimes the best gift you can give your family is the opportunity to understand what they've lost. They wouldn't understand immediately. They'd be angry first, probably for a long time, but maybe, standing in front of that locked chalet, bags in hand, dreams of a free luxury vacation evaporating like morning mist, they'd have one moment of clarity, one instant of recognizing that actions have consequences, that you can't exile someone and keep their gifts. Or maybe they wouldn't learn anything. Maybe they'd just add this to their catalog of my sins, further proof that I was difficult, petty, dramatic. But for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't care what story they told themselves. 3:59 p.m. I looked at the cancellation button one last time. Such a small thing. Just a click, but it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, prepared to jump into a future where I was no longer the good daughter, the reliable one, the family doormat decorated with dollar signs. In the end, it wasn't even hard. Click. Your reservation has been canceled. A full refund will be processed within 3 to 5 business days. I stared at the confirmation screen, waiting to feel regret, guilt, anything negative. Instead, a strange lightness filled my chest, like setting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten I was holding it. 4:01 p.m. The window was closed. The chalet was canceled. The decision was made. I turned off my phone again and drove home slowly, watching the sun set over the mountains. Tomorrow. My family would drive to Wyoming expecting luxury and finding emptiness. They'd stand in the snow, confused and angry, probably calling me over and over. But tonight, I was going to open a good bottle of wine, order from my favorite restaurant, and plan my own Thanksgiving. Maybe I'd volunteer at a shelter. Maybe I'd accept my friend Sarah's standing invitation to join her family. Maybe I'd just stay home and cook exactly what I wanted, watch whatever I chose, and give thanks for finally choosing myself. The chalet in Jackson Hole would sit empty this Thanksgiving, but for the first time in 36 years, I wouldn't. Friday arrived with an odd sense of calm. I woke naturally at 7 a.m., no alarm needed, and lay in bed listening to the quiet. My phone sat face down on my nightstand, still powered off. I'd kept it that way since yesterday afternoon, and the silence felt like a luxury I'd never allowed myself. I made coffee and stood at my living room window, watching Denver wake up. Somewhere on I-80, my family was probably already on the road. Dad liked to leave early for long drives. They'd have loaded the car with unnecessary supplies Mom always packed, like they were crossing the Antarctic, and Ashley would have claimed the back seat so she could rest during the 5-hour journey. Were they excited? Probably. Relieved to be escaping for a week without the weight of my presence? Definitely. I wondered when the first hint of concern would creep in. Maybe when I didn't respond to their inevitable "we're on our way" text. Maybe when they tried to call for some trivial question about the chalet amenities. Or maybe they were so confident in my compliance that they wouldn't worry until they actually arrived. I showered, dressed in comfortable clothes, and made myself a proper breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, no rushing, no checking messages between bites. Just me and the morning sun streaming through my kitchen window. Around 9 a.m., I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. The $10,000 hold had indeed disappeared, and the refund was already pending. $10,000 that could go towards something meaningful now. Maybe I'd take that solo trip to Japan I'd always dreamed about, but never pursued because family comes first. Maybe I'd invest it. Maybe I'd donate it to the women's shelter where I'd volunteered in college, before family obligations consumed all my free time. The possibilities felt endless. I spent the morning doing things I enjoyed, but rarely made time for. I read a book, an actual paper book. Not work reports. I painted my nails a bold red that Mom would have called attention-seeking. I played music loud enough to feel it in my chest, something that would have earned complaints about the noise. By noon, I was getting hungry. I decided to go to the farmer's market, something I'd skipped for weeks due to work stress and family drama. The November air was sharp but pleasant, and the market bustled with pre-Thanksgiving shoppers. I wandered slowly, buying things just because they appealed to me. Honey from a local beekeeper, artisanal cheese I couldn't pronounce, a small watercolor painting of the mountains. The artist, an elderly woman with paint-stained fingers, smiled as she wrapped it. "Gift for someone special?" she asked. "Yes," I said, realizing it was true. "For me?" She nodded approvingly. "Best kind of gift." Around 2 p.m., curiosity finally got the better of me. They would have arrived in Jackson Hole by now. I wondered how long they'd waited at the chalet before calling the property management company. How long they'd argued about whose fault it was that the confirmation never came through. How long before they realized I'd done it on purpose. I made it until 3 p.m. before turning on my phone. It took a full minute to boot up, and when it did, the notifications came in like a tsunami. 67 missed calls, over 100 text messages, dozens of voicemails. The numbers alone told a story of escalating panic and rage. I didn't open any of them, not yet. Instead, I checked Instagram. Ashley had been documenting the trip in real time. The last post, from 3 hours ago, showed her in the car, mountains visible through the window. "Almost there. Can't wait for the best Thanksgiving ever. Blessed #family time, #mountain, getaway." The post before that, a gas station selfie. Before that, a video of Mom singing along to the radio while Dad drove. They all looked so happy, so confident, so unaware that their destination was a mirage I'd dissolved with a single click. I wondered what Ashley's next post would say. Would she admit the truth, that they'd been uninvited from their own rejection, or would she spin it somehow, Make it about their suffering rather than their choices. My phone rang. Sarah. Just checking in, she said when I answered. How are you holding up? They should have arrived by now, I said. And I haven't looked at the messages yet. Good for you. You know my offer stands, right? You're welcome here for Thanksgiving. My mom's already planning to set an extra place. Tears pricked my eyes. Sarah's family had included me without question, while my own had excluded me from a celebration I was funding. Thank you. I might take you up on that. I hope you do. But Lauren, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. It takes guts to stop being a doormat. After we hung up, I steeled myself and opened the text messages. They told a predictable story. 9 a.m. Mom. We're leaving now. So excited. Please send the confirmation ASAP. 10 a.m. Ashley. Hello, we need the address. 11 a.m. Mom. Lauren, this is getting ridiculous. Answer your phone. 11:30 a.m. Dad. Your mother is upset. Send the information now. 12 p.m. Ashley. Are you seriously ignoring us right now? 1 p.m. Mom. We're almost there. Please respond. This isn't funny. 2 p.m. Ashley. Lauren, we're at the property office and they say there's no reservation. 2:15 p.m. Mom, call me now. 2:30 p.m. Dad. Lauren, what have you done? 2:45 p.m. Ashley. You canceled it, didn't you? You actually fucking canceled it. 3 p.m. Mom. How could you do this to us? The voicemails were worse. Mom's voice progressing from annoyed to furious to something almost broken. Dad's clipped anger, Ashley's shrieking accusations. I deleted them all without listening to the end. There was one final text from Ashley, sent just minutes ago. You're a selfish bitch, and I hope you're happy ruining Thanksgiving for everyone. I stared at that last message for a long time. Ruining Thanksgiving for everyone, as if I hadn't already been excluded from everyone, as if my absence was required for their happiness, but my presence was not. I typed out a single response to the group chat. I was uninvited from Thanksgiving, so I canceled the reservation. I hope you all have exactly the holiday you deserve. Then I blocked all their numbers. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. No more notifications, no more demands, no more emotional manipulation masquerading as family connection, just blessed, peaceful silence. I spent the rest of the afternoon cooking, not a full Thanksgiving spread that would come later, if I decided to make one, but a simple, perfect meal just for me. Roasted chicken with herbs from the farmer's market, a salad with that expensive cheese, a glass of wine from a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, realizing that choosing myself was occasion enough. As the sun set, I sat at my dining table, the one I'd bought myself, in the home I'd made myself, living the life I'd built myself, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: contentment, not the fleeting satisfaction of meeting someone else's expectations, but the deep, quiet joy of finally meeting my own. My family was probably driving back to Ohio now, their car silent with fury and disappointment. They'd have to explain to anyone who asked about their mountain Thanksgiving why they were home instead. They'd have to face the consequences of taking someone for granted. They'd have to figure out their own holiday plans, just like they'd forced me to do. Ashley was wrong. I hadn't ruined Thanksgiving. I'd simply refused to fund theirs at the expense of my own. I raised my wine glass to the empty chair across from me, the one they'd made sure I'd never fill at their table, and made a toast to family, the one we choose, not the one we're stuck with. Tomorrow, I'd call Sarah and accept her invitation. Tomorrow, I'd start planning that trip to Japan. Tomorrow, I'd begin building a life where love wasn't earned through service but freely given and received. But tonight, in my quiet apartment with the lights of Denver twinkling outside, I celebrated the most important guest at my table myself, the one who'd finally shown up, the one who'd always been enough. Saturday morning felt different. For the first time in my adult life, I woke without the weight of unread messages from my family. My phone stayed peaceful, no guilt trips disguised as good morning texts, no passive-aggressive requests, no demands wrapped in false sweetness, just quiet. I made coffee and opened my laptop, curious about the wider fallout. My social media was set to private, but I could still see public posts. Ashley hadn't updated her Instagram since yesterday's travel photos. The silence from her feed, usually bustling with oversharing, spoke volumes. But I found what I was looking for on my cousin Brittany's Facebook page. Brittany, my aunt's daughter, had always been the family gossip. Her status from last night read, "Can you believe some people hearing crazy stories from the family grapevine? All I'll say is, karma is real, and you can't treat people like ATMs forever. Family drama, truth hurts." The comments below were a mix of curiosity and speculation. Someone asked if this was about the Thanksgiving thing they'd heard about. Brittany had replied with just, "So word was spreading. Good. Let them all know that the family doormat had finally stood up." I closed the laptop and got ready for the day. I'd told Sarah I'd come for Thanksgiving, which gave me 5 days to figure out what to bring. 5 days to exist without the constant emotional drain of my family's expectations. 5 days to discover who I was when I wasn't trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, my heart raced. Had they driven back to Denver, but looking through the peephole, I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, holding a covered dish. "Lauren, dear," she said when I opened the door, "I made too much soup. Thought you might enjoy some." I accepted the dish gratefully. Mrs. Chen had lived next door for 3 years, and we'd developed a quiet friendship based on mutual respect and the occasional borrowed ingredient. She'd never asked why my family never visited, just as I never asked why her son only called on holidays. "Thank you so much. Would you like to come in for tea?" She smiled. "That would be lovely." We sat at my kitchen table, sipping green tea while her homemade 1-ton soup cooled on the counter. The conversation meandered pleasantly until she set down her cup with purpose. "I don't mean to pry," she began, "but I heard you on the phone earlier this week. These walls are thin. You sounded upset." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "I'm sorry if I was too loud." No. She waved away my apology. "I just wanted to say, family is complicated. My own mother, she never thought I was good enough. Nothing I did pleased her. When I married my husband, she said he wasn't successful enough. When I had my son, she said I was raising him wrong. When I opened my restaurant, she said I was wasting my education. What did you do?" I stopped trying to change her mind, started living for myself and my own family, the one I chose to build. She died still disapproving of my choices, but I had a good life anyway. Sometimes, dear, the price of their approval is too high. After she left, I sat with her words and her soup, feeling nourished by both. The price of their approval was too high. It cost my self-worth, my peace of mind, my holidays, my joy. It cost me the ability to exist without constant criticism. It cost me myself. That afternoon, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I started therapy homework my counselor had assigned months ago. She'd asked me to write a letter to my family not to send, just to express everything I'd never been allowed to say. I'd claimed I was too busy, but the truth was I'd been too scared. Now, with their numbers blocked and their power over me finally broken, I wrote, "Dear Mom, Dad, and Ashley, you uninvited me from Thanksgiving because you said I make things heavy. But what you call heavy, the rest of the world calls having feelings. What you call difficult, others call having boundaries. What you call too much, healthy people call being human. I've spent 36 years trying to earn a love that should have been my birthright. Every achievement was an offering you ignored. Every gift was a bid for affection you withheld. Every sacrifice was a down payment on acceptance that never came. You taught me that love was transactional, but only I was expected to pay. Ashley received freely what I couldn't purchase with a lifetime of effort. You gave her grace for failures while demanding perfection from me. You celebrated her minimum while ignoring my maximum. When I was 7, I washed dishes while Ashley played, and you said it was because she was younger. When I was 17, I worked part-time jobs while Ashley got an allowance, and you said it was because I was more responsible. When I was 27, I was building a career while Ashley lived at home, and you said it was because she needed more support. The pattern was clear. I existed to give, she existed to receive, and you existed to enforce this dynamic. I booked that chalet hoping to finally create the family moment I'd always craved, one where we were all together by choice, not obligation, one where my contributions were seen and valued, one where I belonged not as the help, but as a daughter. Instead, you showed me with brutal clarity that my presence is not only unwelcome but actively unwanted. You wanted my money but not me, my gift but not my existence, my service but not my soul. So I gave you what you asked for my absence, and in that absence, I hope you found the peace you claimed I disturbed. I hope the empty chalet was everything you dreamed of. I hope my invisibility brought you joy. But I'm done hoping for anything from you. I'm done pretending that crumbs are a feast, done acting grateful for neglect, done funding my own exclusion, done breaking myself into smaller pieces hoping you'll finally find me digestible. You were right about one thing. I do make things heavy. I bring weight to situations that you prefer to keep light. I bring reality to your fantasies. I bring consequences to your actions. And that, apparently, is unforgivable. But I'm not asking for your forgiveness. For the first time in my life, I'm not asking you for anything at all. I'm simply informing you that the Bank of Lauren is closed. The emotional ATM has been decommissioned. The family doormat has been removed. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it will be on my terms. Equal treatment, not scraps. Mutual respect, not one-way service. Genuine inclusion, not reluctant tolerance. Real love, not performative obligation. I suspect these terms will seem impossible to you. Too heavy, too demanding, too much like treating me as a full person worthy of the same consideration you automatically grant Ashley. That's fine. I've built a good life without your approval. I'll continue building it without your presence. I wish you all exactly what you've given me, nothing more, nothing less. Lauren. I read the letter 3 times, then closed the notebook. I wouldn't send it, not because I was scared, but because they'd already shown me they weren't capable of hearing it. They'd twist my words, weaponize my vulnerability, use my pain as evidence of my difficulty. But writing it had loosened something in my chest, a knot I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't supposed to be there. That evening, I cooked Mrs. Chen's soup and ate it slowly, savoring the warmth. I thought about chosen families, about the people who show up without being asked, who give without keeping score, who include you because they want you there. Tomorrow, I'd start making a list of those people. I'd reach out to old friends I'd neglected while pouring all my energy into family obligations. I'd say yes to invitations I'd previously declined because family comes first. I'd build a network of relationships based on mutual care instead of one-way sacrifice. My phone, still blissfully quiet, sat on the counter like a talisman of my new freedom, somewhere in Ohio. My family was probably raging about my selfishness. Let them. They'd created a narrative where I was the villain years ago. At least now I'd done something to earn the title. Outside my window, Denver's lights began to twinkle in the early darkness. The city looked different somehow, fuller of possibility, richer with potential. Or maybe I was the one who looked different, finally seeing clearly without the fog of false hope. I poured a glass of wine and raised it to the empty room. To making things heavy, I said aloud. To bringing weight and consequence and reality to places that need it. To being too much for people who were always too little. The wine tasted like freedom. The soup tasted like care from someone who owed me nothing but gave it anyway. The silence tasted like peace. For the first time in my life, I was full. Sunday arrived with unexpected sunshine. Rare for late November in Denver, I woke feeling lighter than I had in years, as if canceling that reservation had deleted more than just a booking. It had erased decades of accumulated weight. I spent the morning at a coffee shop I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. Too busy managing family crises and manufactured emergencies. The barista, a young woman with purple hair and kind eyes, complimented my red nails. "Bold choice," she said. "Red says you're not afraid to be seen." I smiled, thinking of my mother's voice, attention-seeking. How strange that the same color could be powerful to one person and threatening to another. While sipping my latte, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and unblocked my family's numbers. Not because I was ready to talk, I wasn't, but because I wanted to see the truth of their reaction without filters. I needed to witness their response to finally understand who they really were when they couldn't get what they wanted from me. The messages flooded in like a dam breaking. From Ashley. "I can't believe you're this petty. We're your family. You ruined everything because your feelings got hurt. Grow up. Lauren, the world doesn't revolve around you." From Mom. "I'm heartbroken. How could you do this to us? We were so looking forward to this trip. Your father is devastated." Ashley cried the whole drive home. "I hope you're satisfied with the pain you've caused." From Dad. "This was cruel and unnecessary. We raised you better than this. When you're ready to apologize, we'll be here." I read each message carefully. Like an archaeologist studying ancient texts, every word revealed more about them than about me. Ashley calling me petty while demanding a free vacation. Mom claiming heartbreak over a canceled trip, but not over excluding her daughter. Dad demanding an apology from the person they'd uninvited. The delusion was breathtaking. There were also messages from extended family. Apparently, the story had spread quickly through the family phone tree, each retelling probably more dramatic than the last. My Aunt Ashley's godmother naturally had written a long message about family loyalty and forgiveness. My uncle sent a brief, "That was messed up, Lauren." Various cousins had chimed in with their opinions, split between those who thought I was justified and those who thought I was savage. But one message stood out. It was from my grandmother's sister, my great-aunt Helen, who'd moved to California decades ago and barely kept in touch. "Good for you, sweetheart. I've watched your mother replay her own childhood with you girls for years. My sister, God rest her soul, would be appalled at how you've been treated. Don't you dare apologize. Aunt Helen." I stared at that message, a piece of family history I'd never known. My mother replaying her childhood. I wanted to call Aunt Helen immediately, but I saved her number for later. First, I had a decision to make. I found the resort's website and navigated to their review section. Part of me wanted to leave a glowing review about their excellent cancellation policy. Instead, I found myself looking at photos of the chalet again. That beautiful space, those mountain views, that promise of togetherness, all of it had been real. My desire for family connection had been real. The only fiction was believing my family wanted the same thing. I closed the laptop and got dressed for the day. Sarah had texted earlier asking if I wanted to go shopping for Thursday's dinner. My mom insists you bring something, but honestly, just bring yourself. That's enough. Just bring yourself. That's enough. When had anyone in my family ever said that to me? At the grocery store with Sarah, I found myself overwhelmed in the best way. Her family's Thanksgiving was clearly a massive affair, her cart filled with ingredients for dishes I'd never heard of, spices I couldn't pronounce, foods that reflected her family's Korean heritage mixed with American traditions. "My mom goes all out," Sarah explained, adding what looked like the 10th bag of sweet potatoes to our cart. "She says Thanksgiving is about abundance, not just food, but love. Everyone brings something. Everyone eats everything. Everyone goes home with leftovers." "What if someone can't cook?" I asked, thinking of all the years I'd done most of the cooking while my family critiqued. "Then they bring drinks, or flowers, or just stories. My cousin Marcus brings his guitar. My aunt brings her famous laugh. My nephew brings drawings he made at school. Everyone has something to offer just by showing up." Just by showing up, I turned away, pretending to study the cranberry display so Sarah wouldn't see my tears. We spent the afternoon cooking together at her apartment, testing recipes and laughing at our failures. Her boyfriend, James, wandered in and out, stealing tastes and offering commentary. The ease between them, the casual affection, the way they included me without question, it felt like watching a foreign film without subtitles. Beautiful but incomprehensible. "Your phone's buzzing," James noted, pointing to where I'd left it on the counter. I glanced at the screen. More family messages. I'd removed the block but kept notifications off, checking only when I chose to. "Family drama," Sarah asked gently. "Family extinction burst," I corrected, using a therapy term. When you set a boundary, people often escalate their behavior before accepting it, like a toddler screaming louder before accepting bedtime. "Are they toddlers?" though, James asked with a grin. "Emotionally, yes." We all laughed, and I felt the remaining tension leave my shoulders. That evening, back in my apartment, I finally called Aunt Helen. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and slightly amused. "I wondered when you'd call," she said. "Saw your number in my phone earlier, but no message." I wasn't sure what to say. "Your text. It surprised me." "I bet it did. Your family doesn't talk about the past much. Do they? Too busy repeating it?" "What do you mean?" Helen sighed. "Your grandmother, my sister, she played favorites too. Your mother was the responsible one, always working, always trying to earn love that went freely to her brother. Sound familiar?" My chest tightened. She did to me what was done to her. With some variations, at least Grandma praised your mother's achievements. Even if she didn't celebrate them, your mother couldn't even give you that. It's like she needed to make sure someone else felt what she felt, and you were the safest target. And Ashley got to be the golden child your mother never was. Probably why she defends her so fiercely. Through Ashley, your mother gets to right the wrongs of her own childhood at your expense. We talked for an hour. Helen filled in gaps I'd never known existed, painted a picture of generational patterns I'd been unconsciously living out. By the time we hung up, with promises to stay in touch, I felt like I understood something fundamental. My mother hadn't just failed to break the cycle. She'd perfected it. I made myself dinner, a simple stir-fry with vegetables from the farmer's market, and ate it while reading the latest family messages. They'd shifted from anger to bargaining. Mom offered to discuss the misunderstanding if I would just apologize for the cancellation. Ashley suggested we could move past this if I booked another vacation for Christmas. Dad proposed a family meeting where we could air grievances productively. All of their solutions required me to apologize first, to admit wrongdoing, to accept blame for responding to their rejection. They wanted reconciliation without accountability, forgiveness without change. I typed out a simple response to the group chat. "You uninvited me from Thanksgiving. I accepted your decision. I'm not sure what you expected, but someone who pays for a vacation they're excluded from isn't being kind, they're being a doormat. I've retired from that role. I wish you all well." Then I turned off my phone and ran a hot bath. As I soaked in lavender-scented water, I thought about patterns and cycles, about inherited wounds and chosen healing. My mother had replicated her own hurt with me, but I wouldn't pass it on. The cycle would end here, in this bathtub, with this decision to choose myself. Tomorrow, I'd go to work and excel at a job where my contributions were valued. Thursday, I'd sit at a table where my presence was wanted. Someday, if I had children, they'd never wonder if they were loved equally. They'd know. The chalet in Jackson Hole was probably booked by another family now. One that would actually show up together. Good for them. As for my family, they'd have to figure out their own Thanksgiving, just like they'd made me figure out mine. The water was cooling, but I felt warm. For the first time in 36 years, I was exactly where I belonged in my own life, on my own side. Finally home. Monday through Wednesday passed in a blur of purposeful activity. Work became a refuge where my competence was recognized, my contributions valued. The senior director position my manager had mentioned was officially posted, and she pulled me aside to ensure I was applying. "You've earned this," Lauren, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I almost cried at her words. Such simple validation, freely given, no strings attached, no guilt embedded, no subsequent request for favors, just recognition of my worth. Each evening, I check my phone to find escalating messages from my family. The bargaining phase had shifted to something uglier. Mom had started invoking deceased relatives. "Your grandmother would be so disappointed." Ashley had moved to threats. "Don't expect us to be there when you need something." Dad had retreated into cold formality. "When you've matured enough to discuss this reasonably, you know where to find us." But there were other messages too. Aunt Helen had started texting me daily funny memes, photos of her garden, simple check-ins that expected nothing in return. My cousin Brittany had privately messaged, "Heard the whole story from multiple sources now. You're my hero. Seriously." Even some family friends had reached out. Mrs. Patterson, our next-door neighbor from childhood, sent a Facebook message. "Always wondered why such a successful young woman rarely came home. Now I understand. Proud of you for standing up for yourself." Wednesday afternoon. I left work early to help Sarah with final Thanksgiving preparations. Her apartment smelled like heaven kimchi, sweet potatoes, some kind of marinating meat that made my mouth water. Her mother had arrived that morning and immediately put me to work rolling something she called yakgwa. "Like this," she demonstrated, her hands quick and sure. "Not perfect. Perfect is not the point. Made with love is the point." As we worked side by side, she told me about her own family, about coming to America with nothing, about building community from scratch. "Family is not just blood," she said, pressing dough into molds. "Family is who shows up, who stays, who sees you truly. You understand." I nodded, throat tight with emotion. "Good. Then you understand why you belong at our table tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't from anxiety, it was anticipation. For the first time in my adult life, I was looking forward to Thanksgiving. No walking on eggshells, no managing everyone's emotions, no cooking for people who wouldn't thank me, just showing up as myself and knowing that was enough. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to my phone buzzing. Thursday morning, Thanksgiving. The first message was from Sarah. "Happy Thanksgiving, don't forget the green beans, and yourself, mostly yourself." The second was from Aunt Helen. "Thinking of you today. Sweetheart, remember you're exactly where you're supposed to be." The rest were from my family. I almost didn't read them, but curiosity won. Mom had sent a photo of their dining table, set for 3 with the good china. "It's not the same without the whole family," she'd written. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost funny. The whole family, as if I hadn't been explicitly excluded. Ashley. "Hope you're enjoying your lonely Thanksgiving. This is what happens when you choose pride over family." Dad. "Your mother cried all morning. I hope you're satisfied." I looked at their messages. Really looked at them. Even now. Even on Thanksgiving. They couldn't just say, "We miss you," or "We were wrong," or "You matter to us." Everything was about their pain, their disappointment, their holiday being ruined, nothing about the daughter and sister they'd pushed away. I typed one final message to the group chat. "I'm spending Thanksgiving with people who want me there. I hope your day is everything you planned when you uninvited me. Please stop contacting me. I need space to heal from years of being treated as less than. I wish you well, but I wish myself better." Then I blocked their numbers again. This time, it felt permanent. I showered, dressed in my favorite sweater, soft purple cashmere that Mom would have called showy, and carefully packed the green beans I'd made using Sarah's mom's recipe, looking in the mirror. I saw someone I hadn't seen in years myself. Undiminished. Whole. The drive to Sarah's family home in the suburbs was peaceful. Denver's streets were quiet. Most people already gathered with their chosen tribes. I thought about my family, probably sitting down to their meal now. Did they set a place for me out of habit? Did they toast to my absence? Did anyone suggest that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong? It didn't matter. Their table was no longer my concern. Sarah's house was chaos from the moment I arrived. Kids running everywhere, elderly relatives holding court in corners, cousins debating politics in the kitchen, football playing on two different TVs. It was loud, messy, overwhelming, and absolutely perfect. "Lauren," Sarah's mom called out, rushing over to take the green beans. "You made it. Come, come. So many people to meet." What followed was a whirlwind of introductions. Sarah's aunts, who immediately adopted me, her cousins, who pulled me into their debate about the best Korean BBQ in Denver, her nephew, who shyly showed me his turkey drawing, her grandmother, who didn't speak much English, but patted my hand and nodded approvingly when told I was Sarah's friend from college. "No family nearby?" one aunt asked gently. "No," I said simply. "Not anymore." She squeezed my shoulder. "Well, now you do?" When we finally sat down to eat, all 27 of us crammed around tables pushed together, Sarah's father stood to speak. He talked about gratitude, about chosen family, about tables that expand to welcome whoever needs a place. "Today we're grateful for old friends and new family," he said, looking directly at me. "For everyone who brings their own flavor to our table." The meal was unlike any Thanksgiving I'd ever experienced. Korean dishes mixed with traditional American ones, 3 types of kimchi next to stuffing, bulgogi alongside turkey, my green beans, made with gochugaru and sesame oil, fitting right in. But more than the food, it was the feeling. Laughter that included everyone. Stories told without cruel punchlines. Requests passed without criticism. Children allowed to be children without being shushed or shamed. Love expressed openly, freely, without price tags attached. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom, overwhelmed. I stood in the small space, breathing deeply, trying not to cry. This was what family could be, should be, what I'd spent 36 years trying to earn and failing to achieve because it was never available for purchase. A soft knock, Sarah's voice. "You okay in there?" I opened the door. This is a lot." She hugged me. "Good a lot or bad a lot?" "Good. So good it hurts." "That's grief," she said gently. "Mourning what you should have had all along. It's okay to feel both grateful and sad." We returned to the table where dessert was being served, both pumpkin pie and yakgwa, ice cream and sweet rice cakes. Sarah's nephew climbed into my lap without asking, assuming welcome, the weight of him, trusting and warm, made me think about futures I'd never let myself imagine. As the evening wound down, people began the elaborate process of dividing leftovers. Sarah's mom insisted on packing me enough food for a week. "You come back," she said firmly. "Not just holidays, anytime. You understand." "I understand," I said, voice thick. "Good. Family shows up whenever hungry, whenever lonely, whenever need to remember they belong somewhere." The drive home was quiet, my car smelling like kimchi and belonging. My apartment felt different when I returned, not empty but peaceful, chosen solitude rather than forced isolation. I unpacked the leftovers, each container a tangible reminder that I'd been included, fed, cared for. My phone sat silent on the counter. No longer a source of dread, but just a tool, its power over me finally broken. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting Denver in white, somewhere in Ohio. My family was probably doing dishes, maintaining their narrative about ungrateful Lauren who ruined Thanksgiving. Let them. I had my own story now, one where I was the hero for finally saving myself. I poured a glass of wine and stood at my window, watching the snow fall. Today I'd learned something profound. Family isn't about blood or obligation or earning your place through service. It's about showing up as yourself and being welcomed exactly as you are. It's about tables that expand and hearts that open and love that doesn't keep score. "Happy Thanksgiving," I whispered to my reflection in the window, to the woman who'd finally chosen herself, to the daughter who'd stopped auditioning for love, to the person who'd discovered that the best seat at the table is the one where you're truly wanted. The snow kept falling, blanketing the world in fresh possibility. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges, But tonight, I was full in every way that mattered. Not just with food, but with belonging. Not just with wine, but with worth. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged home, in every sense of the word. Black Friday arrived with bitter irony. While the rest of America fought over discounted televisions, my family launched their final assault. I'd unblocked their numbers one last time, morbidly curious about their next move. I didn't have to wait long. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw the Mom, Dad, and Ashley standing in the hallway of my building. They'd driven 5 hours through the night to arrive at my doorstep unannounced. Mom held a bakery box, probably from the fancy place downtown, an attempted peace offering. Ashley stood behind our parents, arms crossed, scowling. Dad looked tired, older somehow, as if the 5-day standoff had aged him. I didn't open the door. "Lauren, we know you're in there," Mom called out. "Your car is in the garage. Please, we need to talk." I watched them through the peephole. These 3 people who shared my DNA, but had never truly shared my life. Part of me wanted to let them in, to fall back into old patterns, to apologize for causing them inconvenience. That part was muscle memory, not truth. "Go away," I said through the door. "You weren't invited." The irony wasn't lost on any of us. "Don't be childish," Ashley snapped. "We drove all this way." "Nobody asked you to." "Lauren, please," Dad intervened. "We're your family. Open the door." "You uninvited me from Thanksgiving because I make things heavy," I replied, voice steady. "I'm just respecting your wishes. My presence would ruin your visit." "That's not, we didn't mean." Mom fumbled for words. "It was a misunderstanding." "No, it wasn't. You were very clear. You wanted the vacation I was paying for. But not me. There was no misunderstanding." Silence. Then Ashley. Predictable as always. "So you're really going to leave us standing in the hallway like criminals?" "Criminals usually face consequences for their actions," I said. "So yes, I suppose this is fitting." I heard Mom gasp. "Lauren Marie, that's enough. We're your parents. You will show respect." "Respect," I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. "Like the respect you showed when you excluded me from a family vacation I was funding, like the respect you've shown my entire life, treating me like staff instead of a daughter." "We never," Dad started. "You did. Every day, every choice, every time Ashley got grace and I got criticism, every time my achievements were expected and hers were celebrated, every time you took my money but not my presence. I'm done pretending it didn't happen." Through the peephole, I saw Mom sink onto the hallway bench, the bakery box sliding from her lap. "This is ridiculous. We came all this way to fix things." "No," I corrected. "You came all this way to make me fix things, to apologize for reacting to your cruelty, to smooth things over so you can go back to using me guilt-free. But I'm not broken anymore, so there's nothing for me to fix." Ashley stepped forward, phone in hand. "I'm recording this. Let everyone see how you're treating your family." "Please do," I said. "Make sure to include the part where you demanded a free vacation but not my company. I'm sure your followers will find that fascinating." She lowered the phone. For 10 minutes, they alternated between pleading and demanding. Mom cried, Dad threatened, Ashley pouted, the full spectrum of manipulation on display in my hallway. And for the first time, I felt nothing but mild pity. They were so small. These people I'd spent my whole life trying to please, so limited in their capacity to love without conditions. Finally, Dad played their last card. "If you don't open this door right now, we're done. No more chances. You'll be out of this family for good." I let his words hang in the air, tasting their emptiness. When had I ever truly been in this family, as more than a resource to be tapped, as more than a problem to be managed? "I removed myself from this family when I canceled that reservation," I said finally. "You just didn't notice because you were too busy being angry about losing your free vacation. Go home. Create whatever narrative makes you feel better. Tell everyone I'm selfish, ungrateful, difficult. I don't care anymore." "Lauren!" Mom's voice broke. I'm building a life with people who want me at their table, who celebrate my presence instead of just tolerating it, who see my worth beyond my wallet. I hope someday you understand what you've lost, but I'm not waiting around to see if you do. I stepped away from the door. Their continued knocking echoing through my apartment. I made coffee, answered work emails, started a grocery list. Normal things, living my life while they performed their grief in my hallway. An hour later, the knocking stopped. 2 hours later, I checked the peephole. They were gone, leaving only the abandoned bakery box on the hallway floor. I left it there. Let building maintenance deal with it. I was done cleaning up their messes. That afternoon, Sarah called. How was your morning? My family showed up unannounced. I didn't let them in. Good for you. How do you feel? I considered the question. Free, sad, relieved, like I'm grieving something that never existed. That's exactly what you're doing, she said gently. Want to come over? Mom's making soup. And just like that, I had somewhere to go where I was wanted. The weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas passed peacefully. I got the promotion at work. I started dating someone tentatively, carefully, learning to accept affection without suspicion. I deepened friendships I'd neglected. I joined a book club. I volunteered at a shelter. I built a life that wasn't organized around earning my family's love. They tried one more time, on Christmas Eve. A card arrived with a check for $10,000. To reimburse you for the chalet, the note read, "We hope this makes things right. Love, Mom, Dad, and Ashley." I looked at the check for a long time. $10,000 to make things right. As if money could erase 36 years of being less than. As if paying me back for one canceled vacation could balance a lifetime of emotional debts. I donated the check to the women's shelter where I volunteered. Let it help women who were escaping their own toxic situations. Let it do good in the world, instead of serving as a bandage over a wound too deep for money to heal. New Year's Eve found me at Sarah's family's party, surrounded by people who'd adopted me without question. As midnight approached, her grandmother pulled me aside. "You have good heart," she said in careful English. "Hurt heart, but good heart. Next year, less hurt. Year after, even less. One day, you wake up, heart all good, only little scar to remember." "Thank you," I whispered, hugging her carefully. "No thank, just truth. You belong here now. You understand." I understood. As the countdown began, I thought about my family. Were they together? Had they replaced me at their celebrations as easily as they'd excluded me from Thanksgiving? Did they miss me, or just miss what I'd provided? 10, 9, 8. It didn't matter. Their table was no longer my concern. 7, 6, 5. I had built my own table, filled it with people who saw my worth. 4, 3, 2. My phone stayed silent. No guilt trip texts, no manipulation, no demands. 1. The room erupted in cheers. Sarah hugged me tight. "Happy New Year. Lauren, this is going to be your year." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. 6 months later, I was walking through downtown Denver when I saw them, my family, sitting at a sidewalk cafe. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. Mom saw me first, her face cycling through emotions: surprise, hope, anger, resignation. I could have walked on, pretended not to see them. Instead, I stopped, meeting their eyes calmly. We looked at each other across the sidewalk. 3 people who'd shaped me through their failures, and 1 woman who'd survived them. Ashley opened her mouth, probably to say something cutting. Mom placed a hand on her arm, shaking her head slightly. Dad just stared, his expression unreadable. I nodded once acknowledgement, not forgiveness, and continued walking. My phone stayed silent. No one chased after me. We all understood some bridges, once burned, light the way to better destinations. That night, I hosted dinner for my chosen family, my table, bought with my own money, in my own home, surrounded by people who loved me without conditions. We laughed, we ate, We existed in the easy warmth of mutual care. "You're glowing," Sarah noted. "Something happened today." "I saw them," I admitted. "My family. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, not hope, just peaceful detachment." "That's healing," she said, raising her glass. "To peaceful detachment and tables full of people who deserve us." We toasted, the sound of glasses meeting like bells announcing freedom. Outside, Denver sparkled under starlight. Somewhere in the city, my biological family was probably maintaining their narrative about ungrateful Lauren. Let them. I had written my own story, one where the heroine saves herself and discovers that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. And I had chosen well. The chalet in Jackson Hole had promised a dream vacation. By canceling it, I'd given myself something better, a life where I was valued, respected, and genuinely loved, where my presence was celebrated, not just my presence, where I could be my whole self without apology. As my guests laughed around my table, I raised my own quiet toast to the woman who'd finally shown up for herself, who'd discovered that the price of their love was bankruptcy of the soul, and had chosen wealth of spirit instead. I was home, not in a place, but in a truth. I was enough. I had always been enough, and I finally believed it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below, so we can connect and exchange thoughts about family, boundaries, and choosing ourselves. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to click the hype button so more people can discover this story. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts.